Hi everyone. Today is Salesforce Development Day 29. Let's see what are we going to learn today. So we'll quickly go through the previous session and we'll talk about the Queueable interface and we'll talk about the schedule programming and we'll talk about the Flex Queue and also we'll talk about the invocable method. So these are the topics and we'll have a conclusion, today's interview questions. Now, till yesterday, we were talking about the asynchronous. So we have discussed the batch class, we have discussed the future method. So in the future method, we saw the drawbacks. Future method does not support the S object parameters. And future method cannot call the other future method class. That means chaining process is not possible. Right? Future method does not provide a tracking mechanism through the programming. Right, these are the main drawbacks of this. So in order to overcome those drawbacks, we have a concept called Queueable Interface. So Queueable Interface, for a Queueable Interface is a kind of a addition of the future method. It is addition of the future method. So this is another asynchronous, which is Queueable Interface. So in order to implement a Queueable interface, we need to have a certain steps. Queueable interface has to be implemented similar format of the batch class. That means whenever we are implementing the Queueable interface, we need to create a global class. That means access modifier is global, which should be implemented by system.Queueable interface. Whereas in batch, whenever we are implementing the batch class, we use an interface called batchable.database.batchable. That is the interface we use it. Now, in the Queueable interface, whenever we are implementing the Queueable interface Apex class, we need to use the implement system.Queueable interface. System.Queueable interface. This is the first step. So syntax will be global class name implement system.Queueable. System.Queueable. So within this, we will write a logic. And the second step is we have to provide the implementation for the interface method. That means once I implement the outer structure of the class, once I implemented the outer structure of the class, for example, let's take a batch class. Whenever I implement the interface database.batchable, I need to have 3 methods that are expected. Start method, execute method, finish method. Similarly, for the Queueable interface, whenever I'm implementing the system.Queueable, if I'm using that system.Queueable interface, I need to have one method, which is the interface method, which is called execute method. In Queueable interface, I need to have only one method. This is only one method is needed. Whereas in the batch class, it is 3 methods are expected for the database.batchable interface. But here I'm using the system.Queueable interface. System.Queueable interface expect only one method, which is the execute method, So global class name implement system.Queueable. Within that, we will write a method global void execute. And here the interface is system.Queueable context. You can give any variable name here. And within that, we will write a business logic. This is the overall structure of the Queueable interface. If I have to implement any Queueable interface, the first thing is I need to use the implement system.Queueable, and it should have an execute method. In the execute method, one parameter is system.Queueable context. Now these two are mandatory. Once we have implemented the Queueable interface, assume that Queueable interface is implemented. So once we have implemented, how can I pass this class to the another Apex class? That means how can I execute it? So what we have to do is step 3 is push the Queueable class into the Apex queue. We have to push the queueable class into the Apex queue and track the result of the queueable class using the async Apex job, similar like a batch class. So that means in order to execute the queueable interface, we need to use system.NQueue system.NQueue. Within that, we need to specify new and the queueable class name. System.NQueue. That means put this queueable into the queue. Place that into the Apex queue. So here, whatever the class is, their queueable class, place it into the NQ is nothing but place it into the queue. Place it into the Apex queue. And we can track the result. How can we track the result? By using we have to capture the job ID from the system.NQ job. And based on that job ID, we can query the async Apex job. Async Apex job. From there, I can get how many job items are processed. Everything I can get the details. So these 3 steps need to be implemented in order to implement the queueable interface. In order to implement queueable interface, these are the 3 steps. Now, one of the drawback in the future method. The drawback is chaining. Chaining process is not supported by the future method, right? So now I'm saying that queueable is addition. What are the drawbacks are there with the future method? Everything I can implement using the queueable interface. Now what I'll be doing is I'll be creating a chaining process by using the queueable interface. Chaining process in a sense, what I'll be doing is I'll be creating the 2 queueable interfaces. I'll be creating 2 queueable interfaces. This is queueable interface 1 and this is queueable interface 2. Now, once the queueable interface is done, then I'll be calling the queueable interface 2. So this is how I'm connecting the both of them. That means it is a chaining. It is a chaining. Let's assume that. Let me go to the Salesforce. Let's assume that I'll be creating the hiring manager. I'll be creating the hiring manager. So through the code, I'll be creating the hiring manager record. Whenever the hiring manager record is created, I wanted to create a position record by adding the hiring manager record. By adding the hiring manager record, I wanted to create a new position record. That means I'm creating the hiring manager record here. Once the hiring manager record is created, the related position record, I'll be creating it. The related position record. Now, creation of the hiring manager, I'll place it into the one queue. Creation of the position record, I'll place it into the another queue. Now, I'll build the chaining between these 2 queueable jobs. Now, let's go ahead and implement that. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is hiring manager. File, new, Apex class. Let's say that I'm creating the hiring manager queueable. Hiring manager queueable. And this is my class. So what I'll do, I'll create a global. I'll use the access modifier is a global class name. And then we have to use the implements. We have to use the implements system.Queueable. System.Queueable. This is the interface. Now this interface expect a method. Now if I try to save this, it is expecting the must implement a method which is having the parameter called queueable context. Now global void execute. Now here I'll be mentioning system.Queueable. System.Queueable context. And you can give any name here, QC. I'm giving QC. Now this is Queueable Interface. Queueable Interface. In this Queueable Interface, the first logic which I'll be implementing the business logic to create new hiring manager record. To create new hiring manager record. For that, let me create hiring manager underscore C HR record equal to new hiring manager. I'm creating a object. Once the instance is created here, I'll use this object name dot name equal to, let's say, Queueable HR, and then we have a HR record dot contact number. I'll use some number here. I'll use some number, and then HR record dot. We have a email address. I'm giving some email address. gmail.com. Now HR record dot. Let's give location equal to Hyderabad. Right? Now, what else I have? Mandatory information. Click on it. New. Now click on a new record, email address, contact number, location, name. So all the mandatory information I have given. If you want to add a CTC, you can add it, but that should be fine. Now, once all the data is added here, we are not into the for loop. So directly I can use insert HR record. Insert HR record. Now next I'll check HR record dot ID not equal to null. That means a record is created in the Salesforce database. A record is created in the Salesforce database. Now I'm going to print that system.debug hiring manager record ID. Plus, I'll say that HR record dot ID. No. This is the first one. First queueable method. Now the second one I need to create whenever I'm creating the hiring manager record. I want to create position record as well. This position record should be created. So let me create a new Apex class. So let's say position queueable. Position queueable. So let's click on this. No. Access modifier should be the global. Class name implements system.Queueable. System.Queueable. And then I need to have a method global void execute and within this we need to have a system.Queueable context. So I'm giving some name here. Now within this execute, I'll be creating a position record. Within this, I'll be creating a position record. So I have a position record underscore C, POS equal to new position. If I wanted to create a new position record, if I want to create a new position record, what all the data is mandatory, number of vacancies, name, location, HR, email ID. Now let's go here. Now, POC dot name equal to, let's say, AI. Position name is AI, position location is Hyderabad, and position email @gmail.com, and the position status, let's say it is a new position. So we have a new status. Now position dot open date. So when we are going to open, assume that we are going to open today, system dot today. And when my position milestone, like how long it is going to go for it. So milestone date, let's assume that next 30 days. So system dot today, and then I'm going to add days 30. So milestone is next 30 days. Any questions? And
then
then
we will be giving like dot format also, right? System.today dot add days dot format.
Yeah, you can give the dot format, but
Like,
that
exactly
you are putting that into the debug log, or if you are passing the data. But when you are, while storing here the record, whenever you are creating a record, automatically it will take it as a normal way. So you need not to do the format. In case you want in the report, or you wanted to print the data of date format, in that case, you can use the dot format.
Okay.
So, and we have a maximum budget, $18,000. And let's say that this position is travel. Number of vacancies, let's assume that 5. Oh, that's all. So let's add the travel also, travel required equal to true. And we have a subject, position, description, skills required. So skills required equal to require 2+ years of AI experience. That's all. Now, this is normally creating the record. This is creating the individual record. If I say insert POS, it will create a record, but it will not link that record here. It won't link to the hiring manager. So whatever the hiring manager is there, it won't link because we have not given any linking. Now, if I have to link, I need to know the hiring manager record data. Hiring manager record data, I need to know. So if I have to know the hiring manager record data, That means whatever the hiring manager is created in the first queuable Apex class, that data needs to be passed to the position queuable. That means first create the record, queuable hiring manager record in the queuable one, and whatever the ID is created, pass that complete record to the position queuable, so that in the position queuable, whenever we are creating the position object, I'll link this position object to that particular ID, so that whenever the position record is created, it will create a position record, and also it will update the related record. That means I can link the position record to the whatever the hiring manager is created. Whatever the hiring manager is created. Now, who can pass here? It can be this queuable has to pass the data. It cannot pass to the execute method. I cannot call here position queuable dot execute, and then I cannot pass that data. I cannot pass that data. So I have to directly pass it to the class. The class has to directly listen to the what is the record that is coming. The class has to listen to the directly what is the data that is coming from the queuable. So whenever this class is called, I wanted to get the hiring manager record. So what I'll do is I'll create a constructor, public position queuable. And here this class is expecting data from another queuable. So the data is hiring manager data it is expecting. Hiring manager data it is expecting. Now here, this is a constructor. Constructor should be the constructor name is same as a class name. And constructor does not have a void, static, or anything does not have it. Constructor name should be always same as a class name. And whenever the class is called, whenever this class is called from any other, for example, here queuable one Apex class is calling here. Whenever this class is called, during the call of this class, I wanted to pass the certain data. So we can pass that data whenever I'm calling the position queuable. And position queuable always has to be access modifier is public access modifier. And this does not have any return type. It does not have any return type, right? Now you can pass multiple parameters here. So basically constructor, whenever you are implementing the constructor, couple of conditions. The first point is constructor name should be always same as the class name. And the second one is constructor are used to assign the default values to the class member. Values for the class member. And access modifier for the access modifier for the constructor should be always private. Sorry, should be always public, not the private. Should be always public access modifier. You cannot keep the private here. It should be always public. Why it is a public? Because this class is called from another member. Whenever it is calling it, the constructor has to listen to the parameters. The constructor has to listen to the parameters. And constructor does not have any return type. Constructor does not have any return type. And not even void. There won't be void. We will not be writing the void, static, or string, any of this. We are not writing anything there. And constructor can, we can give multiple parameters here. Can have multiple parameters. Can have multiple parameters. Now, in this constructor, whatever the data that I'm getting from the first Apex class, whatever the data that I'm getting from the Apex class, I want to store that into the local variable. Whatever I'm getting from the outside of this class, I wanted to store it into the local variable. Now, if I say here, hiring manager, HR record equal to HR. Now, if I say this, I need this HR data, HR record data here, because I need to link that position. So position dot hiring manager equal to, what I'll do is HR record dot ID. HR record dot ID. And if I try to save this, what it is saying that HR record is not there. This variable is not present because we are declaring it within the method. Whenever we declare within the method, cannot be accessed by other methods. So what I'll do is I'll take out this, copy, and I'll paste it here outside of this. That means within the class, I'm declaring the variable. Within the class, I'm declaring the variable. So this is called class variable. This is called class variable. And if you are declaring within the method, then it is called as a method variable. If you are declaring it within the method, then it is called as a method variable. This is method variable. Now we do not want a method variable because this particular variable need to be accessed by other method. So what I'll do is I'll simply do this dot HR record, this dot HR record. So it's not necessary that you need to, when do I need to use this? Do I really need to use it this or not? If you do not specify also, that should be all good. It will accept it, but it is better to use the this dot for the constructor. It is better to use it for the constructor this dot. If you do not write also, there is no harm. It will accept it. It will accept. Now I have a HR record data, and this HR record data, I'm getting it. I'm linking to the hiring manager. I'm linking to the hiring manager. Also, in the position, we have something called HR contact number. So this HR contact number, what I'll do is HR.contact number. Right? I'm using the same contact number of the HR inside the position. Now I'm inserting the data. Now I'm inserting the data. Once the data is inserted, now I can check whether is the data is inserted properly or not. That means position.id not equal to null. That means that it has some data not equal to null. System.debug and let's say position record inserted with ID. Now position.id. I'm just printing the position.id. If you want, you can print the complete record also. If you want to print complete record, you can just say position record inserted. That's all. Now I have implemented two separate queuable Apex classes. I have implemented one queuable Apex class here. I have implemented another queuable Apex class here. Now I wanted to invoke the second queuable Apex class from the first queuable Apex class. I want to invoke it. So invoke should happen on the first queuable so that it will go to the second queuable and execute the remaining process, whatever is there, the business logic that gets executed. Now, in order to invoke the queuable Apex from the first class, I wanted to invoke it when the HR record is created, right? Once the record is created, and if I have an ID, that means the record is present in the database. Now, once it is present, then I wanted to invoke the another queuable, which is a position queuable, class. Invoke the position queuable class to create the position record. Now, in order to invoke the step 3, right now we are into the step 3. So if we want to invoke the queuable, or if I wanted to execute the queuable, then we have to use system.NQueUp new queuable Apex class. So by using this, I'm going to invoke the queuable interface. Now here, system.NQ job. Now here, I'll say new, and the class name is position queuable. We are initializing here the constructor, and then I'm passing the data of HR record. Right now, I'm invoking the second queuable Apex class from the first one. I'm invoking it. Whenever I invoke the queuable class, I'll get a job ID. from system.NQueJob. So here I'll be having a job ID equal to system.NQueJob. In case if you wanted to track what is happening here, right? So in that case, you can store the entire result into the job ID. No. I'm done with implementing the chaining queuable Apex class. Now I'll go to the debug. Let me execute the queuable. So in order to execute the queuable, let's copy this. Now system.NQ. Now here the queuable is new, the HR queuable method. Now this I'm going to store it into the one ID, because output of this will be ID. That ID I'll be storing into the job ID. Now, if you want to track, this is the one which is invoking the hiring manager queuable Apex class. Here we are invoking it. Invoke HM queuable class. Now the second step is I wanted to track it. What is happening? I wanted to track. So track the result. In order to track the result, we know that we have a object called async apex job. We have a object called async apex job. So let's say that this is a job details equal to select. You can use ID, status, job items that are processed, job items, processed, and from, let's say, from async apex job. Now, for this, what I'll do is I need to put a where condition. Otherwise, it will give me the all the job details. Otherwise, it will give me the all the job details. I'm not interested on all the job details. Only the specific one where the ID equal to colon this particular job ID. Give me the status of that particular job ID. Now I can print system.debug. System.debug. This is a job ID. Now job details dot ID. And similarly, I wanted to print the status. Similarly, I wanted to print the status, job status, job details dot status, job details dot status. I'm invoking the first queueable class. Then I'm tracking the result by running the query async apex job. And then I'm printing the job ID, job status. Now let me execute it. Now, debug. It is into the queued, right? Now the second one is executed. Now debug is position record. So we are getting the position, complete position record, and it is linked to the hiring manager. Now I should be able to see the hiring manager. Hiring manager record. Okay, so let's go to the all. Okay, Queueable HR. Queueable HR. So for this record, just now it is created. And the email address, contact number, queueable. If I go to the related, now my position record is executed. AI. Position record AI, 5 number of vacancies, and the position status is new, and open date is today. Open date is today. Now, this is how we implement a queueable apex class. This is how we implement a queueable apex class. And we will do the chaining of the queueable apex class. Yes.
Ma'am, like, why did we use that constructor, like, in order to chain these both queueable classes? So we used, or like what?
Because whenever we are invoking the queueable, we invoke the class. I do not give here, like if I give here dot execute, assume that I'm passing the directly to method. Now, position queueable is my class. Position queueable dot execute. I have a execute method. Will it be accepted? It will not be accepted. Right? So if I write any other thing also, it will not be accepted here. Because the syntax itself is saying that system.NQ job new queueable class. We are not saying that I'm calling the specific method here. We are just calling the class. So whenever the class is called, I wanted to send the parameters. Could be one parameter, could be multiple parameters. So whenever I wanted to send to class, so usually class does not have any parameters here. I cannot write a parameters here. I cannot write a parameters here. Class will not have a expected parameters. So for that, what I have done is with the same name of the class, I have implemented a constructor because I am expecting some parameters from the outside of this class. Whenever this class is called, that should need to be passed the record. Clear? Constructor is kind of a do init in the LWC in a Lightning Aura. When is the do init gets executed? Init handler.
In process of execution.
On load of the component, it will execute it.
On load of the component.
Similarly, on execution of the another class, if I need a certain information, which are very important in order to execute any logic within this class. If I'm calling this class and inside this class, if I have a 10 methods or a 5 methods, all of the methods are needed certain data. Okay, before going to those methods, I need to do some kind of a calculation. Now, in case if you need this method, this class should be expected some parameters outside of this. Then in that case, we should be writing the constructor. Now, any other questions? Now, in interview, they will ask that in the asynchronous, I have a batch class, I have a future method, I have a queueable. These three are there. Now, while executing the batch class, can I call the future method? Can I call the future method? So the question from the interviewer, they will ask that, how can I call the future method from the batch class? Now, before answering it, can I call the future method from the batch class?
I think yes.
It might accept whenever you are writing a code. It might accept whenever you are writing a code, compilation might be accepted. But does it execute during the runtime? During the runtime, whenever I schedule a batch, does it execute during the runtime? Usually we cannot call the future method from the batch. We cannot, it's not right way, and we should not be doing that. Future methods are not allowed inside the batch class. Because you are already in a batch context. And it is running, this batch is running on the specific time. This batch is running on the specific time. So let's assume that as soon as the account record get updated through the batch process. Okay, I'm updating the account record through the batch process. Now, if I call any future method here in order to do any other details. So during the runtime, what will happen is batch class will throw an exception saying that it will say that future method cannot be called from future or a batch apex. It will give you the exception saying that future method cannot be called from a future method or batch method. So we should not be doing it. So when, for example, from the batch class, I'm updating certain records. Once I updated the certain records, maybe I'm doing the future method. Okay, probably some data I'm updating through the future method. Whenever the cursor goes to the future method, immediately during the execution of the batch class, you will see that future method cannot be called from either a future or a batch method. It will give you the exception. It will give you the exception because you cannot call future method from anywhere. Only for the long running process. Only for the long running process. That means if you have a third party, okay, whenever you are hitting a third party or whenever you want to send a details to the third party by clicking on some button on the user interface, right? So in that case, through the interface from the Apex class, you can call the future method, and which is a long runnable, you can do that. But if you have a batch class or if you have a trigger is possible, you can call the future method because whenever you are saving a record, you wanted to send the data to the third party system. Trigger is possible, you can call the future method. But within the asynchronous batch class or another future method or queueable can call, but another future method or a batch class cannot be called. Now, the second question they will ask is, can I call the queueable method? Can I call the queueable class from the batch class or from the future? Can I call queueable Apex from the future or from the batch class? Can I call or not? Can I call the queueable Apex class from the future or from the batch class?
I don't think so. If future method is not allowed, then even queueable shouldn't be allowed, I feel.
But the queueable class is, which is an additional plus of the future method. Whatever the drawbacks are there with the future method, we have, Salesforce has given the more access to the queueable. Now, future method cannot call another future method, but queueable can call another queueable method. So then that means queueable can be called from batch class as well as the future. What are the drawbacks are there with the future method? Now you cannot call another future method, right? This is not possible. That means whether you are calling it from the batch class, it should not be allowed. But what are the drawback is there with the future method? Now Salesforce has given us the queueable method. Now you can go ahead and call which are the one you wanted to call, because this has opened up the access to call it. So when it is calling the another asynchronous class, then definitely you can call it from the batch class or you can call it from the future.
But Swapna, as far as I understand now, the batch class is like a synchronous class only, which will run in future at scheduled time, right? It is not an asynchronous job as such.
Which one?
Batch.
Batch is
No, I mean, it is a synchronous process which is scheduled at a specific time. It will run at specific time, isn't
batch
it?
is asynchronous. Asynchronous, there are 5 types: batch, future, queueable, schedulable, and then flex queue.
No, I mean, see, yesterday you said that asynchronous is what we are not aware what time it will run. Okay, it will take its own time and we will get the response. The response is not in our control, right? But batch class is something that, okay, I'm telling that run this specific code at 12 o'clock. So it will run. Maybe it will take 2 hours. We don't care, but we know it is going to run at 12 o'clock, right? So the logic inside the batch class will have the synchronous code, isn't it?
Assume
Which
that
will run in future, yeah.
there are 5 batches which are scheduled in same time. Okay, so there are batch class, batch 1, batch 2, batch 3. All are scheduled at the same time. At a time, as per the Gartner limits or as per the standard, you can run at a time 5 batches. If you schedule 5 batches at the same time, all 5 is going to show you as a processed. It is going to show you as a process. Everybody is scheduled at 2. Everybody is scheduled at 2. Now, when the 2 a.m. it is scheduled, all of them get showing as a process. None of them shows as a hold. If you schedule another batch class after the 5th batch, if you schedule it another batch class, then 6th onwards, everybody goes on to the hold. Okay, as per the standard, at a time, you can schedule 5 batches. That means you can execute 5 batches. So that means these all should be running. When it says processed, these all must be running it at the back end. Now, when I say running it, probably it has its own queue and everybody, now all of them are processing parallel. When you schedule a single batch, then it is executing its own. But assume that you are scheduling it multiple batches at the same time. Now, how it is going to execute it?
Okay. Yeah.
Now we have seen the queueable calling the another queueable. Now, how can we call the batch class? One batch class to another batch class. Can I call from one batch class to another batch class? Now I have a batch 1 as well as batch 2 is there. Can I call another batch from the batch 1? We can call the batch from another batch, which is possible. But if you want to call from another batch, where do you call it? From where do you call it? We have a three methods are there. Start method, execute method, and finish method. So from where do you call the another batch?
Finish.
Finish method. So from the finish method, if you want to call another batch, so what you will write is, first you will initialize it like a batch job. Let's assume job 2. Job 2 equal to new batch job 2. New batch job 2. So this is what you will be doing it in the finish method. Once all the logic is completed, then you are going to call another batch class in the finish method by specifying the database.execute batch. And you can specify here job 2. And if you need any number here, how many, each transaction, how many records should be processed, you can specify there. Now, this is also a question that will be asked during the interview. If I wanted to call another batch from the first batch, how can I call it? Where do I specify it? If I say finish, they will ask the question that why can't I specify in the execute method? Why should I be specifying in the finish method? I think we all know that. So basically everything, all the execution is completed. Once it is execution is completed of those records, whenever the cursor goes to the finish method, then we will call the another batch. And if you want to pass any data, we can pass the data there. Right, so that is how we call it from the batch to batch. Now the next one we will see okay, homework. Implement a queueable job to create an account record and call another queueable job to create related opportunity for account. So you need to implement it to Apex classes, two queueable Apex classes. One queueable Apex class is to create an account record. Another queueable Apex class is to create an opportunity and link that opportunity to that particular account. And
how to implement practically from one batch job to another batch, like in finish method?
So in finish method, you have to write For example, let me go whatever we have implemented. So assume that I have a batch class. This is what we have written. Now in the finish method, let's assume that I have another batch here. Right, this is another one. So now I'll take this. Now in the finish method, call that particular class, create an instance here, UA equal to new, the batch class name, and database dot execute. You can specify here UA, for example, 1. That's it. Now, in order to execute the batch, whatever the logic you will write it, the same logic you have to write it in the finish method.
Okay, like whatever we do in the anonymous window, like we need to do the same. I'm like how to execute the same thing in this finish method, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Now, another question can come up in the interview. In a day, how many batches can be executed? Now, if I'm doing a chaining, now this batch is calling this batch is calling another batch, like that it is keep on calling. Let's assume that so many batches we are calling. But how many batches can be executed? Assume that we have scheduled so many batches we have scheduled in a day. So many batches we have scheduled in a day. How many batches can be executed in a day?
1,50,000.
2,50,000. In a day, we can execute 2,50,000. They might ask this also in the interview.
Swapna,
Yeah.
suppose I'm suppose inserting around suppose 1 lakh of records, okay, through data loader, okay. So in this scenario, do we need batchable in any context?
Data loader, you are doing it through the data loader tool.
To insert the records.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. And suppose now while inserting, okay, I need to perform some logic. Okay. Like kind of a trigger. Okay. So is it the best way to write a trigger for it, or in the batchable class? How? Otherwise, the trigger will be invoked for each and every record, right? If I'm inserting 1 lakh record, the trigger will be called for each of the record 1 lakh times. So is this the correct way?
So whenever you are inserting a lot of record within the system, let that record sit in the system. Let it execute it. Let those records sit into the database. Let's insert everything into the database.com. And on the day night, whenever you are doing it on the same night, so probably at 12 a.m. or midnight, you can schedule a batch class, whatever the logic you wanted to perform. During the batch class, it will check all the records and update the records. By the time you come next day, the records gets updated.
Okay. And so in that case, the trigger we have to deactivate, right? When I'm doing the data loader.
Yes.
Okay.
So moving on to the schedulable programming. Now, schedulable is nothing but whatever the logic, like we have written so far the batch class. So far, we have written the batch class. In order to execute the batch class, what I am doing is I'm opening the anonymous window, and then here I'm writing a logic to execute it. By clicking on here execute button, I'm executing the logic. What I'm doing here, manual step which I'm doing it. Assume that the Salesforce team or the within the company, they said that we wanted to perform certain action early morning 2 o'clock. early morning, 2 o'clock. Now you have written the batch class. The logic, everything has been implemented. Now, do you wake up at 2 o'clock in the midnight, early morning, and just to run this particular batch class? You will open the Salesforce, you will log into the Salesforce and you will go to the developer console. In the developer console, you will open up the anonymous window. From the anonymous window, you will give here batch class and you will say that database.execute batch, and then you will click on execute. Now, just to do these steps, the person need not to be wake up during that time. If you want to automate this process, I don't want the human person to be sitting in front of the system till 2 a.m. or till 3 a.m. or whatever the time it is, right? So to avoid those kind of scenarios, Salesforce has given an option during your business hours. That means 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. During your business hours, just schedule it when you wanted to run, it. So schedule it so that system will take care. Now, similar example in our life, in our real-time scenario, we have a Gmail account. In the Gmail account, what you will do is you will review the emails, whichever you feel it. You will delete those emails. Whenever you delete those emails, those will go and sit into the trash. There is an option called here trash. So whatever the deleted records are there, deleted record sits into the trash. But how long will these records will be there? Only for 30 days. After 30 days, the Google will automatically delete the records that are in the trash. Now, who is doing here to delete the records which are in the trash? Google has scheduled a program, the one which are sitting in the trash, which are more than 29 days, like in last 30 days, it is still in the trash. That means we can delete it. Now you have to check today's date. So what Google is doing is checking the today's date and then minus 30. What are the last 30 days records are there? Last 30 days records are there, or it could be a less than today, and this came here in the trash on the 1st of May, and still it is sitting 1st of March, and still it is sitting in the trash, and it's been 30 days crossed. So what Google is doing is everything condition it is checking, and it is deleting all the records which are sitting in the trash. So that is the scheduled one. Similarly, we have another scheduled ones. If you have an account, in Flipkart or Amazon, right? Or in any sites, if you have an account, if you have given your birth date, okay, if you have registered your birthday along with the birth date, exactly at 12 a.m., you will receive an email. Now, how this is happening, that possible that tomorrow is your birthday, day after tomorrow another person birthday, day after tomorrow another person birthday. Every day they will not be sending the emails, right? And every day they will not be writing the emails. So there is an email template. In that email template, they are just changing the name of whoever's birthday is there, this is a merge field. So they are changing the name of it, and whatever the another fields are there, they are just changing it. And they have scheduled a class, they have scheduled certain logic to send an email exactly after 12 a.m. So if it is taken, the batch, whatever the class is there, it is taken just a second to execute it. If it is taken a second to execute, you will receive an email at 12 o'clock exactly. But if it is taken some minutes, 5 minutes it's taken, then you will receive it 12:05. The email will receive at 12:05, right? So whenever the scheduled batch is completed, that's how you will receive an email saying that happy birthday. Right, so those are the scheduled emails, or scheduled logic is executing at the backend. The logic is executing at the backend on the specified time, and whatever the action needs to be performed, it will be performing during that time. Now let's take a scenario. Now we have a position record here. So we have a position record. Now, I have so many position records. Let me add milestone also. Right? Every day, so many positions are getting open. Every day, so many positions are open. Now, that's fine. We are keep on adding the positions here. But once the position is closed, once the position is crossed the milestone, then what is the point of keeping that record inside the system? Now let's assume that there is a few records, like this is March 30th, right? And this is also March 30th, this is also March 30th. No, but these positions are already closed. As per the milestone, these positions are already closed. When it is closed, we do not want to see this record at all from here, because it might be open the same position in the next month. In the next month, the same position might be open. Now, if it is open, I don't want to keep whatever the closed ones are there. Let's assume that I do not want to keep it. I do not want to keep those. So in that case, what I'll do is I'll be deleting the position records. Now, how can I identify whether the milestone is already crossed the position record is already crossed the milestone date? How can I verify it? What are the different ways that we can implement? Definitely we have to schedule a batch, but logic, how can we implement it?
Compare milestone date with system.today.
System.today, compare the milestone. Okay. That is, we are going to write a code. Okay. What else? What else can be done? Now think on it. So this kind of a scenario, it will come. So they will say that you need to find out the easiest way to implement it. Now, how can we understand whether date checking is a complicated, okay, code? I do not want to do the date checking. You can do the date checking, but is there any other way? Is there any other way?
Ma'am, what is the question?
So how can I verify whether my position record is already crossed the milestone date? Okay, I'll give you some clue here. Definitely we have to implement a class, but that should be fine. But some part of it, we have to do it through the configuration.
The validation rule?
Validation rule, when it will fire it?
Only when creation and insertion.
Formula field. So creation of record validation is firing it, but we are not creating the record here. We are getting the records
Yeah.
to the batch class.
So formula field.
Formula field, what can we check the formula field?
Maybe we can add a formula, what do you say, one extra field, a formula field, which will tick mark, which will check the date and we'll say cross the milestone or not.
Okay, so what should be the data type for the formula?
It can be checkbox.
Right, so whatever the system dot today greater than what are the milestone date, instead of doing in the code, what I'll do is I'll create a formula field where the data type is checkbox. So I'll open the position record here, position object. So I'll go to the fields and relationships and click on new. Now let's create a formula field. Next. Now let me give here position. Record can delete. Now here the data type should be the checkbox. Click on next. Now the condition that I'm going to verify here is I'm going to use the if condition. If that logical test will be, I'll be using the today. Today is the function. Today greater than. Now in the position we have a milestone date. Milestone date. If it is true, the condition is true, then I'll be printing the true here. And if it is false, then I'll be printing the false. Check the syntax. Totally fine. Click on next. Now, you might be thinking, what is the point of adding the formula field here? The same thing I can do it in the code also. The same thing I can do it in the code also. But let's assume that tomorrow I wanted to run a report. Tomorrow I wanted to run a report. In the report also, I need to check the same condition. Whatever I'm writing in the code, in the report also, I need to implement that code whenever I'm doing the reporting. For example, they want a reporting to identify how many are crossed. How many are crossed. So same thing, I need to implement a logic in the report also. So that means multiple places I need this one. Multiple places I need this one. Instead of looking at the date. Now, if you look at the date, it is very difficult for the client to understand. So they have to, each one of them, they have to see like okay, this is the 5-6 means today is, okay, it's April. So we have a time. 3 means March, it is completed. Like this, I have to keep on reviewing the date here. But if I give a checkbox, by selecting the checkbox of sorting the checkbox, easily client can understand, okay, there are 3 records which are already crossed the position. There are already crossed the position. So this is the easiest way for the client instead of them to look at. So client does not want the milestone whenever they wanted to see the list view like this, they wanted to see the list view. So what they will say is, if it is very hard for them to go through the each record and see the date, each record and see the date, because they will be having a thousands of records or 10,000s of record. So for them, it is very hard to go through the each and every record. Either we have to come up with a formula field to show the checkbox, Or else, if they are thinking as a more kind of a graphical representation, then you need to add a flag here. A flag, kind of a flag will be there. So that flag is going to tell them that, okay, these are the records which are completed and these are the records which are still there. So that is up to the client how they wanted to see that record. So date is very, very time taking to review the each record. Time taking to the review each record. So that's the reason most of the clients suggest that they wanted to go with kind of a formula field. Yes, there is a date, we can understand. But whenever I look at the list view, as soon as I look at the list view, it should quickly give me the hint that how many records are completed, how many records are still open, right? So those kind of a scenarios they will ask. So right now we have created a checkbox formula field. So what I'll do is, let me create another batch class, file, new Apex class. Let's say I'm going to delete the position records, delete position batch, delete position batch. I'll use here global, and the interface is database.batchable, implements database.batchable, and here I'll give S object. Now we have a global database.query. I'm querying the data from database. So that's the reason I'm using the database.querylocator. Database.querylocator start, and this required a parameter database.batchable context, and you can give any name, variable name. And then we have a execute method, global void execute, and database.batchable context BC, and I'm going to expect the list of S object. Okay, if you S object. Now here I'll say that position record to process, or let's say records. And then we have another method, global void finish, void finish. Now here also database.batchable context BC. These are the three methods. Now in the start method, I need to write a query. So I'm writing the dynamic query, string query equal to select ID, comma name, comma position. I need a field which is I wanted to check that field. Position record can delete. From position where position, what are the field is there, equal to true. The one which are true, I wanted to delete them. I wanted to delete them. Now database.return database.get query locator. Now here I'll use the query. Now my start method is completed. Now I'll send the data to the execute method. So in the execute method, if it is not empty, if it is not empty, then let me convert those records. I'll be getting the list of position records from this query. So far we have 3 records. So position list equal to, I'm converting that these records, I'm converting that into the list of position. List of position.
Ma'am, instead of taking that list of as subject like in that as a parameter, right? We can take directly as a list of position also, right?
Right. If you write a query here, like for example, if you are writing a query, list of position __ C, position list. If you write a query here, okay, if you write a query, now I know that this is a directly an object and I can return the data. Now output of this, what it is giving is object. Now I can do return position list, which is directly I'm running the normal SQL query. Normal SQL query. So in that case, I can give here position. But what I'm doing here, return type is database.getQueryLocator. Database.getQueryLocator. I'm building a dynamic query here. I'm building a dynamic query. So whatever the return in this string, it is a string actually, it is not a query. It's a string. If you are writing a query here, you can pass a query. But if you are passing a return value as this normal query, then it should be changed here also. It should be changed here also. Now, here it is a string. Now, whatever you are given into the string, it is just executing that string. But does this know that what is the string of the, what are the string I'm executing it? Right? Will it know that? So let me take this. Copy, debug. Database.querylocator list of position POS list equal to database.query. Now system.debug position list. Now, let me execute this. Execute the highlighted one. What is happening? It is not, I'm not able to save the result of database.querylocator here. I'm not able to save the result of database. What are the get query locator is there? I'm not able to save. Now, if you say here, instead of a list of S object, instead of list of S object, if you say here database.query, database.querylocator. Now let me execute the highlighted one. Now what is happening? Query locator is just giving me the query. Just giving me the query. Database.querylocator query equal to select of this. Query of this, but it doesn't say anywhere that I'm running the position record, position object record. It doesn't say anywhere position record. Now, once that is done, now once this is done, can I store directly the database.query into the position object? I cannot save this. I cannot save this. If I say here, list of position, PO equal to position list, let's highlight this, execute this. Now again, it is giving me the illegal assignment. Now basically, the output of the database.getQueryLocator doesn't tell you that which object. Doesn't tell you which object. Now, in case if you want a specific object details, then you have to change the return type. Now, if you change the return type here, does the start method accept it? Now I'm returning the list of position. List of position. Now return type is position list, right? Now let me save this. Which one? This one. Now, so what is happening? I'm returning the position list. I can go to the position list also. You need to change the return type of this. If you change the return type of this, then you can directly pass the data because you are writing a SQL query. Now, in this case, what are the Garner limits that are going to execute it? How many records it is going to pull? If you write a normal SQL query, how many records it is going to pull?
50,000.
50,000. But batch class, does it sufficient? In real time, batch class, it's not a sufficient 50,000, right? So that's the reason we always use the in the real time database.querylocator as a return type. Now, in case if you want list of position, in this case, let me go ahead and delete this. Now I'm getting the list of position because I changed the return type here. I'm returning directly SQL query. It's not a database.querylocator. It's just a simple SQL query. So simply what I'll do, I'll use the database.delete. Database.delete. Now here I'll use this records. I'll use the records, comma, false. Now, let's execute this batch class. Let's see how it is going to do. Now total I have 3 records. If 3 records are deleted out of 8, 5 records will be there with me. Now let me initialize the batch here. New delete batch. Database dot execute. Now let's say PT. It should be fine. Now let me execute this. Execute the highlighted one. Now, so it executed the batch. We are not putting any debug pointer there. So let's refresh here the position. No, we have a 5 records. We have 5 records. Right, so that what I'm doing right now, I am doing it as a from the anonymous window. From the anonymous window, I'm doing it. Now, I do not want to do it through the anonymous window. I do not want to throw it through anonymous window. I wanted to schedule the batch. I wanted to schedule the batch. Let me put back these records. Restore. Now I wanted to schedule the batch. In order to schedule the batch, we have to use an interface called system. If you want to implement a program. Now what we have done is we have implemented a batch class. Let's suppose that instead of writing a batch class, you want to directly implement a schedulable class because you wanted to write the logic, whatever you have written in the batch class, the same logic instead of writing here and scheduling it. What you can do is the same logic, you can put it into the schedulable interface so that you do not have a multiple classes. Or else what you can do is you can use this logic and you can call the batch class from the schedulable. You can call the batch class from the schedulable. So basically we need to implement a schedulable program using the interface called system.Queueable. System.Queueable. So create a global class which should be implemented by an interface system.Queueable. So syntax is global class name implement system.Queueable. This has only one method. So it has only one method, which is a execute method, So within the execute method, we will be writing the logic. Now, let me show you that. Right now I have written the batch class here. I have written the batch class. Now let me create a new Apex class. Let's say that it is a schedule job. Schedule job. I'll be using here. Access modifier is a global. And interface is implements. And I'll be using the system.Queueable. System.Queueable. Within this, I have a method. Only one method is needed, which is a global void execute system.Queueable context. Schedulable context. See. Now, within this, instead of running the logic from the anonymous window, what I'll do is I'll put that logic here. Now, this is, we are calling the batch class. That means we are invoking the batch class. Now, if you do not want to write in two classes, you can bring the logic into the execute method and you can write it. That is also possible. Now, once you have written the scheduled batch class, the step 3 is you need to go to the setup in order to schedule this. Right now, I have not scheduled the batch class. I have not scheduled the class. In order to schedule that, go to the setup, build, develop Apex class. There we have a schedule Apex button. Now here, directly search the Apex class. So when you search the Apex class, you will see few buttons here. Out of them, one button is schedule Apex. Developer console is, if you want to open the developer console, you can click on this. This is new button is in order to create the Apex class, right? And the next one is a schedule Apex. If you click on a schedule Apex button, enter the schedule job name. So job name is, let's assume, delete position. And Apex class, you need to select the Apex class. Now, how many Apex classes it is giving me? Only the scheduled job it is giving me. It is not giving me the batch class. So just writing the batch class, you will not be able to schedule the batch class. If you want to schedule a batch class, you need to put the logic into the schedulable. That means you need to invoke the batch class from the schedule Apex class, and that schedule Apex class can be seen here. Now I can see only one, which is a schedule job. I cannot see the delete position batch class. Batch classes, we cannot see it here. We can only see the schedulable classes. What are the Apex class which is implemented the interface called system.Queueable? only those Apex classes we can see here. Now I'm selecting it. Now I'm selecting the Apex class. Now then select the frequency of interval. Do you want to schedule this Apex class daily, weekly, monthly, right? So if you want a monthly, you can go for monthly. Monthly one time or every month on first Sunday, second Sunday, third Sunday, anything you can mention here. Now, weekly means in case if you wanted to execute this batch class on Thursday, Tuesday, on these 2 days, I wanted to execute. Let's assume, okay, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, I wanted to execute the batch class. So select the frequency of when you wanted to schedule a class. And next one is select the start date and the end date for the scheduling. When you wanted to start this particular the class, what are the logic is there, when it should be starting it and when it should be ending it. So by default, it will give you 1 month. By default, it will give you 1 month from the today's date. From the today's date. So start date is whatever the today's start date is, and then next month start date. If you want, you can change it. For example, you wanted to execute this batch class only for till a week. Now till 13th, I wanted to execute the batch class. Till 13th, I wanted to execute this batch class. What time? You need to select the preferred start time. You need to select the preferred start time. Let's assume that 1 a.m. 1 a.m. I wanted to select it. Now, once you have entered this data, you can click on a save. But before clicking on a save, just observe this text here. Exact start time will depend on job queue activity. That means if you have a batch classes, multiple batch classes are scheduled at the same time. Scheduled at the same time. All should be starting at 1 a.m. So though it is mentioned as a 1 a.m., but it will depend on the job queue activity. Job queue, which is an Apex queue activity. So that activity is going to tell, though it is scheduled at 1 a.m., if it is able to process all of them together, it will be able to process. If the job queue able to handle multiple batches at the same time, it will go ahead and execute it. If it thinks that there is a batch one has so many records, like millions of records, right? So job queue will decide how it wanted to be executed. Now I'll click on a save. So once the job is scheduled, once my job is scheduled, once the Apex class is scheduled, now I wanted to monitor that scheduled job. What are the scheduling is done? What we have scheduled the class. I wanted to monitor that. In order to monitor that, go to the setup and monitor. There we have inside the job, we have an option called schedule Apex. Schedule Apex. So you can directly search here, schedule Apex. So schedule job. In the schedule job, it is going to tell you that who has scheduled this particular job and who has submitted and when it is submitted and what is the next execution time, and through which one it is scheduled, through the scheduled Apex class. Through the scheduled Apex class, this particular job has been scheduled and it is going to start executing. The next one, it is going to say that today night, that means 7th, tomorrow early morning, 1 a.m. it is going to start this batch. It is going to start this batch. In case if you want to change the time here, you did by mistakenly 1 a.m. you wanted to change the time. So click on here, manage. If you click on a manage, you have an option to change here. Now, if you say here, no, I wanted to run at 2 a.m. 2 a.m. It does not have cancel, delete. Okay, it is giving you to the delete. It does not have a save button here. It is asking to delete it. Either you have to delete and you have to create a new one. So you cannot change it. You need to delete that and then you need to create it. Create the new one. Now here I can see all the information. Now once the job is completed, now where can I see all the jobs? So once the job has been completed, Apex job, it will show you that when it is schedule Apex queued. Now it is saying that it is in the queue 8:15 a.m. Scheduled job. It is a scheduled job, and this is the job ID. So there you can monitor all of them. You cannot change if you have scheduled it, if you want to change it, you cannot change it by clicking on manage. So that's how we scheduled it. Tomorrow morning, if I see those records, right now these records are, now I have 3 records here. So tomorrow I'll be seeing only 5 records. So what are the 3 records are there? Those 3 records will be deleted and I can see only 5 records. Homework, implement a batch class to update the records, the one which are created today. The opportunity records, what are the opportunity records are there? The one which are created today. For those opportunities, update the status to prospecting and schedule a batch class to run at 2 a.m. 2 a.m. Now the next one is a flex queue. Flex queues are, so basically we know that at a time we can run only 5 Apex jobs, right? Only 5 batch classes we can execute it. Let's assume that if I have more than 5 batch classes that needs to be executed same time. Let's suppose 95 jobs are there. So what will happen? 5 Apex jobs will be saying that it is processing and 95 will say as a holding. 95 jobs will be saying as a holding. So how can I verify how many jobs are in the holding? So we can verify those details by going to the Apex queue. By going to the Apex Flex queue. So in the Apex Flex queue, I can see that how many records are on hold. If there are anything on hold, it will tell that. Right. Now open resource, update batch, update account batch. Now how many records I have in the account? I have 26 records are there. Now what I'll do is comma 1. Now I'm scheduling it multiple batches here. Let's see if this works. Batch 7, batch 8, batch 9. Now I'm running all of them right now. Click on highlighted one, execute. Now let's see, refresh. Now you see here the reorder. So right now, if you look at this job, come first. So Apex job. So if you look at the Apex job, 3, 4. Yeah, processing. Oh, completed already. Okay. It says that few of them will be on hold. So whenever it is says that on hold, those records I can see in the Apex queue. That means they are yet to be processed. They are yet to be processed. For now, we have a very less data. So that's the reason immediately everything is processed. But usually if you are running multiple batches at the same time in the real time, so you can verify how many batches are in the queue. How many batches are in the queue. So those details you can verify here, Apex Flex Queue. Apex Flex Queue. So that is the main feature behind the Flex Queue. So any questions? Till now we have, whatever we have discussed, we have completed the asynchronous process. Any questions?
Yeah. So now, suppose if I want to schedule a batch job, okay. Uh, uh, suppose I have a class called update account, and I'm implementing a batchable interface as well as a schedule interface. Okay. So in both there are execute method, right? So I can use function overriding in this case and write two execute method, one having the batch context and another having the schedule context.
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah.
You have a update account, batch class and schedule.
Yeah, I have an update account, batch class.
Mm.
Okay. I mean, it's the name of the class is update account. Okay. And I'm implementing two interfaces. One is batch interface, batchable interface and schedule interface.
In the
Okay.
same
Now,
class?
yeah, in the same class. Now both classes have execute method, right? So can I use the function overriding in this case? Like the first execute will have batchable context, the second execute will have queueable context. Is that possible?
Okay, so let's see that. My network became slow. Just give me a second. Okay. So we'll see that tomorrow. Also, I'll be covering tomorrow another topic, which is a corn expression. Which is corn expression. Whatever we are doing it through the Apex Flex Queue, like scheduled job, whatever we were doing it there, instead of going into the UI, and the schedule job, instead of clicking on all these things, can I do it through the programming? So which is called as a corn expression. How can I, whatever I'm doing it here through the, like in UI, I'm going to the Apex, clicking on the schedule job, and then we are selecting the time and what is the frequently, how much, like weekly or a monthly, right? So start time, end time, we are doing it, right? So that instead of going to the UI, can I do it through the Apex class? So it is possible through the Apex class also, that we will do it through tomorrow. And I'll cover this point also, including both the interfaces in the same class. Okay, it's not going to work. So we'll see that example tomorrow. It's not working at all. Okay, that's all for today's class. So we have seen the Queueable interface, schedule, programming, flex queue. We have not seen the invocable. So these are the points which we have seen today: Queueable interface, schedule, programming, flex queue. And I have already given you the trial head URLs. So just practice the trial head. Tomorrow means next week we will see the examples.